History, Sleep, Theatre presents Ancient Egyptian Life Along the Nile. Hello, and welcome. Tonight we invite you to settle in, find a comfortable position, and let your thoughts drift gently into the past. Let the present moment slip away as we travel together through the golden sands of time to a world far removed from our own. A world of quiet rituals and ancient rhythms, where life pulsed steadily under the watchful eyes of the gods. Our journey tonight takes us to the banks of the Nile, in the time of the new kingdom of ancient Egypt, a land where the sun was more than light, where the river was more than water. Here, the days unfolded in cycles of labor and prayer, of heat and harvest, of birth and death, always beneath the endless blue sky. In this episode, we will explore 4 distinct glimpses into life along the Nile. We will begin with the daily experiences of a laborer's wife in a humble village near Thebes, walking barefoot through dust and duty. Then we will turn to the strange and isolated court of Akhenaten, the pharaoh who defied the gods. Next, we'll wander through the rediscovered village of Deir el-Medina, piecing together forgotten lives from shards of pottery and ink. And finally, we will rise into the world of temple incense and perfumed silks, entering the rarefied air of Thebes' elite priestess class. Let us begin our journey in the early light of an ancient Egyptian morning. In a place where the air is already warm and the silence hums with the sounds of insects and stirring life. Segment 1. The daily life in an ancient Egyptian household. Imagine yourself waking just before dawn. The sky outside still a dusty mauve, touched with the faintest blush of the coming sun. You lie on a simple mat, woven from palm fibers, your body stiff from the night air that settled over your mud brick home. The room is still dark, save for a tiny shaft of morning light peeking through a slit in the wall, illuminating a wisp of dust as it floats lazily through the air. You are the wife of a laborer, living in a small village just outside Thebes, around the year 1300 BC. Your home is modest, like all the others in your row, built from sun-baked mud brick. It is cool in the early hours, but will soon begin to trap the heat like a kiln. The roof is flat, often used to sleep under the stars during the unbearable peak of summer, but this morning, your duties pull you quickly down into the shadowed space below. The walls of your home are rough to the touch, plastered with a thin layer of whitewashed clay, which cracks in some places. The floor beneath your feet is hard-packed earth, cool and gritty, and your steps raise soft puffs of dust. There is little furniture, a low wooden stool, a woven reed basket, a few ceramic pots stored in the corner. A small altar is nestled into the wall, decorated with faded symbols and a clay figurine of Tahurit, protector of women and children. The air inside carries the scent of yesterday's fire, mingled with the pungency of drying onions. Sharp edge of smoke and dust. Your eyes water slightly as you move toward the door, lifting the cloth that serves as a curtain to let in the pale light of day. Somewhere nearby. Life in the village is stirring. Your husband has already gone. He left before sunrise to join the work crews building or repairing temple structures under the authority of the local estate. His absence is part of the rhythm of life. 3 weeks of state labor, and perhaps 1 week at home, if the overseers allow. His wages are paid in grain, with occasional allocations of oil or beer. He is not a slave, but he does not work entirely of his own choosing either. Duty to the pharaoh and temple comes before rest. Your first task is to fetch water. The village well is not far, but the queue is already long. You carry a ceramic jar on your hip, wrapped with coarse linen to prevent chafing. As you wait, the voices around you murmur softly, complaints about the heat, about taxes, about a neighbor's goat eating someone's reeds. The jar fills slowly, and you adjust your shawl to shield your skin from the rising sun. Back at home, you begin grinding grain. The sound of the quern stone against the lower slab is rhythmic, steady, almost meditative. It is back-breaking work, and you do it daily. The flour is coarse, full of grit from the stones, and you wonder if your teeth will last another year. The bread it makes will be dense, perhaps flavored with herbs, or garlic if there are any left. Later you tend to the loom. It is a simple vertical frame, and you are weaving linen from flax fibers grown nearby. The strands are rough against your fingers, and the motion of weaving is slow and repetitive. The cloth you make will serve as tunics, as wrappings, as offerings. Nothing is wasted. Even the scraps become fuel or stuffing for bedding. Children run through the narrow alleyways outside, their feet kicking up more dust. Your own children, if they are old enough, might be helping at the threshing floor or assisting a neighbor. If they are younger, they cling to your skirts or nap on woven mats. Illness is common. You mix remedies from crushed herbs, recite protective prayers, and hang amulets in the doorway. Still, sometimes children disappear quietly from the world, and life must go on. The heat of midday presses down like a blanket. Flies gather near the door, a scorpion scuttles out from beneath a basket, and you carefully guide it away with a stick, murmuring a plea to Selkate, goddess of protection from venom. You take a moment to rest in the shade, sipping a thin beer that smells slightly sour but soothes your dry throat. The brew is thick with residue and nutrition, both drink and meal. In the afternoon, you bring offerings to the household shrine, a smear of bread, a wisp of incense, if you can afford it. You speak quietly, words of thanks and hope. The gods are always watching. The walls may be bare, your belly may not be full, but as long as you give thanks, perhaps they will grant you another day of calm. Evening brings your husband home, weary and silent. He eats quickly, more bread, more onions, a little lentil stew. He speaks little of the work of lifting heavy stones, of shouted commands, of temple quotas and inspections. The strain is in his shoulders, the grit under his nails. You wash his feet with cool water, a simple act of care, and then settle beside him to touch the breeze. Segment 2. The man who dared to erase the gods. Akhenaten's great experiment. Imagine yourself standing in the early morning light, walking slowly through a broad stone corridor, lit only by the gentle rise of the desert sun. You are not in Thebes or Memphis, or any of the great cities that have shaped Egypt for generations. You're in a place called Akhenaten, the horizon of the Aten, and everything here is new. The walls are smooth, their decorations sparse, the scent of drying lime hangs faintly in the air. There is no incense, no hush of chants echoing through sanctified dark, just the faint echo of your footsteps and the occasional flutter of linen in the breeze. The pharaoh has called for you. You are an advisor, or perhaps a scribe, in the court of Akhenaten, a ruler who has reshaped the very meaning of divinity. Here, the old gods are gone. Amen. Mut, Osiris, Horus banished from temple walls, erased from inscriptions, abandoned by royal decree. In their place, there is only one god, Atand, the sun disk, the visible giver of life. A god with no form but light, no temple but the sky, and this city, Akhenaten, is its earthly home. The sun has just crested the cliffs to the east. Its rays spill directly into the space, flooding the white flagstones with heat and brilliance. He stands tall, almost elongated, his features unusual full lips, narrow eyes, a slender waist. Some whisper he is divine, his form molded by the Aton itself. Others are less certain, but none speak aloud. He greets you not with grandeur but with serenity. There is no fanfare, no parade of officials, just his voice, soft but deliberate. All life comes from the Aton, he says. He rises in the east to awaken the world, and in his light, all things are born anew. You bow, offering no contradiction. Your role is not to question, it is to record, to advise, perhaps to guide gently, but always within the radiant vision of the king. Around you, the city breathes with strange vitality. Akhenaten is barely a decade old, its foundations still fresh, its buildings still settling. Unlike the dense, ancient streets of older cities, this place is orderly, geometric, aligned with the sun's daily arc. Great temples open directly to the sky. There are no shadowed sanctuaries, no sacred Here, everything is revealed, everything is exposed. The people adjust, or try to. There are masons, craftsmen, potters, many imported from elsewhere. They labor daily in the white heat of the Aten, shaping this experimental city into But beneath their movements lies uncertainty. They whisper, sometimes when they think no one hears. The gods they grew up with are gone. Their amulets are forbidden. Their prayers must be You pass through the streets, observing the city's rhythm. Women draw water from the Nile in clay jars. Children play beside pale limestone walls. Soldiers march, not in defense of empire, but to enforce quiet, strange laws. You hear a familiar tune hummed softly by an old man. Old hymned hymn, too. Amen, long outlawed. He stops when he sees you, looks away. Even in the royal household, there is unease. Nefertiti, the queen, is radiant and present. She walks beside Akhenaten at ceremonies, stands in reliefs as his equal, or near. Their daughters, depicted with elongated skulls and affectionate gestures, follow in processions. Their family is unusually central to religious life. Together, they are the sacred family, living representations of Aten's blessing. And yet, something falters. Nefertiti disappears, not suddenly, but gradually. Her likeness fades from newly carved scenes. Her name ceases to be mentioned in official texts. Rumors swirl. Some say she fell from favor. Others say she assumed another name, perhaps even ruled as pharaoh herself, hidden behind a mask of ceremonial language. You do not know, but her absence deepens the city's strangeness. Meanwhile, Akhenaten becomes more devout, more inward. He no longer speaks of policy, of tribute, of Nile floods, only of Aten. His decrees grow more poetic, more fervent. He composes hymns, dictates their verses by hand. One, the great hymn to the Aton, becomes mandatory reading. Schoolboys memorize its lines. Priests recite it daily. Its tone is gentle, loving Aten, as father, mother, creator, light. But love does not feel great. Egypt begins to bend under the weight of his focus. Tribute slows. The far provinces murmur. Hittite incursions in the north go unanswered. The army is no longer a pride of state, but a quiet, reduced force. Merchants complain of temple closures and disrupted trade routes. Farmers grumble of drought. The Nile, once regular and generous, now arrives late or lean. Still, Akhenaten does not waver. He builds more temples to Aton. He moves the royal tombs closer to the sun. In Akhenaten's cliffs, new tombs are cut, shallow and There is no do it here, no Osirian judgment, only Otan's rays. One evening, you walk through the central plaza. The sun is setting. The city is bathed in golden light. Statues of Akhenaten and his family catch the glow, their faces turned forever upward. You stop and watch as the light fades. With it, the city seems to lose its definition. Without the sun, Akhenaten is just stone and sand. Time passes. Quietly, the kingdom shifts. A boy is crowned Tutankhaten. He is young, uncertain. He is married to one of Akhenaten's daughters. For a time it seems he will continue the Atenist vision, but pressure builds. Priests return. Scribes from Thebes whisper in his ear. Old rites are The boy king changes his name. He becomes Tutankhamen. The temples of Amun reopen. Statues of Akhenaten are torn down, or his images are chiseled from stone. Akhenaten is abandoned. Families return to Thebes and Memphis. Life, it seems, resets. You leave the city quietly. You do not take your official robes. You carry no scrolls. Just a memory of light and silence. Years later, you hear of a tomb discovered, far from a child's tomb, small but filled with treasure. Tutankhamen, the boy who erased the Atan history, will remember him. His name fades, but for those who walked his city, who stood in his presence, who felt the sun at its zenith, and saw in it something more, he will never be entirely gone. His experiment failed, but it was real, it was lived, and it left a mark. The sun rises again, the gods return, but the sky, once empty of form and full of light, still remembers. Now let us walk westward, to a place once forgotten by maps, a place where artisans lived, where laborers recorded their jokes and their grief, to a village hidden in a fold of stone, where history left behind, not monuments, but lives. Segment 3. The Forgotten City Beneath the Sands. The Lost Town of Deir el-Medina. Now let us turn our gaze to a quieter place. Not a temple, not a palace, but a village hidden in the rocky hills near the Valley of the Kings. It is a place where the men carved tombs for gods and kings, and where their families etched their own histories onto stone and pottery. This is Deir el-Medina. You arrive in the soft morning light. The desert air still cool, the shadows long. The village sits nestled in a bowl of cliffs, invisible from the broader valley. It was never meant to be seen. Not by outsiders, not by those who did not wield the brush, the chisel, the stylus. Here, artisans lived. Painters, scribes, stonecutters. The workers of royal tombs. They were not slaves. They were skilled, paid by the state, fed from the granaries of the pharaoh. But their lives, though privileged by comparison, were still full of hardship, of loss, of dust, and of silence. You pass through a narrow gate. The walls are thick, built to protect the village from desert raiders, perhaps simply to separate this sacred workforce from the rest of the world. The streets are narrow and tight, houses built close together, their walls of sun-dried mud brick glowing faintly gold in the sun. A woman sweeps her doorstep with a palm frond. A child carries a small basket of lentils. You hear the scrape of a chisel on limestone, even now, even before breakfast. This village was a place of secrecy, of sacred labor. The men worked on tombs that no one else would see, tombs meant to be sealed for eternity. What they carved would outlive them, if it was not looted. What they painted might never be lit by sun again. And yet, in their own homes, they left traces of life. The houses are small, square, built in tight rows. Within one, a woman kneads bread beside a small hearth. The walls are decorated not with royal iconography, but personal symbols. A small figure of base sits on a shelf, watching over the children. Another wall bears a painted offering to Hathor, barely more than a sketch. These were private acts of worship, unrecorded by officialdom but preserved by time. Outside, two men speak quietly over breakfast. One is a painter, his fingers stained with oak. The other is a draftsman responsible for laying out tomb scenes with mathematical precision. Their tools are neatly wrapped in linen and stored in baskets beneath their beds. Their days are long and measured. Work begins early. The workers march from the village to the Valley of the Kings under guard, their names checked on clay tablets. Attendance is strictly monitored. Absences must be explained. Illness, family funerals, even bad dreams are recorded. These details survive on they tell of human lives in bureaucratic detail. Absence, his wife was bleeding. Absence, brewing beer. Absent, mourning his mother. The work in the tombs is sacred. They paint scenes of the afterlife, lay down spells from the Book of the Dead, carve walls with depictions of Ra's nightly journey through the underworld. Each gesture is an offering, each line a petition to eternity. Yet the workers are not free from worldly concerns. Wages are late, food shipments delayed. Sometimes the grain does not come at all. And then, one day, they stop working. They sit in protest, laying down their tools. It is the first recorded labor strike in history. They do not shout, they do not riot, they sit, they write. They submit formal complaints to the vizier, asking only for what is owed. We are hungry, we have no oil, we have no fish. Their words, though thousands of years old, feel modern. Eventually, the granaries are opened, the work resumes. But discontent simmers. In the quiet corners of the village, life pulses with small routines. A young apprentice sharpens a reed pen, careful not to split the tip. He dips it in red ochre and writes his first letters on a scrap of limestone. A list of tools, a simple proverb, a name his own. Nearby, his father, a senior scribe, copies passages from the Book of the Dead, inelegant, preparing the text that will guide a nobleman's soul to the afterlife. The rhythms of daily life are built around more than labor. In the evenings, the villagers gather in small groups. There are no grand feasts here, no music halls, but laughter is common. Someone shares gossip about an overseer's poor handwriting. Someone else recites a tale from myth of Set's betrayal, of Isis's cunning, of Horus's triumph. The stories bring comfort, not just for their lessons, but for the sense of continuity they offer. Here, in this walled village, the myths are lived anew with each telling. And still, among the shards of daily life, you find something surprising. Humor. Scrawled on an ostrakon, a cartoon shows a cat leading a goose on a leash. Another depicts a noble woman in exaggerated style, her makeup uneven, her wig askew. These are not acts of rebellion, but release. Small jokes etched between the lines of sacred duty. Inside homes, fertility figurines are tucked beneath mats. The goddess, Taurit, with her lion's paws and swollen belly, watches over sleeping children. Amulets of base are worn for protection during childbirth. These are not state-sanctioned rites, but private beliefs that pulse beneath the surface of public piety. Even in the shadow of the pharaoh's tombs, these villagers carry gods of their own choosing in their pockets and prayers. When disputes arise, they are handled with the same bureaucratic thoroughness that marks their work. A man accuses his neighbor of stealing copper chisels. A woman complains that her husband struck her. The village has a court elders and scribes who hear both sides, who record proceedings, who offer judgment. Punishments are mild, usually fines or restitution. What matters most is the recording, the writing. Justice here is a matter of ink and memory. Seasons pass, the flood comes, and then recedes. Crops rise and fall, children grow. Some leave, taken to work on temples or palaces. Others stay inheriting brushes and chisels and the burden of perfection. And then, gradually, the village quiets. The tombs of the kings are finished. The workers are reassigned. The gates of Deir el Medina close more often. Some families leave for Thebes. Others are absorbed into nearby settlements. The rhythms that defined this hidden world begin to fade. Centuries pass. The desert reclaims what it can. Roofs collapse. Sand creeps in through doorways. The walls crumble. Until, one day, explorers find it again. Archaeologists dig carefully through the dust. They find tools still wrapped in linen. Bowls and baskets stacked beside hearths. A straka by the hundreds. Notes, jokes, prayers. A love letter faded but clear. You are my lotus, the one I waited for. A curse against a neighbor. A shopping list for a feast. They uncover skeletons in modest tombs, laid to rest with amulets, with shabdi figurines, meant to serve in the afterlife. These were not forgotten people. Their lives were ordinary, but their memories endured. Today, we walk their streets in silence. We see their work, not only in the grandeur of the royal tombs, but in the small touches of home wall paintings, clay figurines. We listen, quietly, to their voices etched in broken stone. And so the forgotten city beneath the sands rises again, not in grandeur, but in the quiet dignity of remembered lives. In the quiet corners of the village, life pulses with small routines. A young apprentice sharpens a reed pen, careful not to split the tip. He dips it in red ochre and writes his first letters on a scrap of limestone. A list of tools, a simple proverb, a name his own. Nearby, his father, a senior scribe, copies passages from the Book of the Dead, inelegant, preparing the text that will guide a nobleman's soul to the afterlife. The rhythms of daily life are built around more than labor. In the evenings, the villagers gather in small groups. There are no grand feasts here, no music halls, but laughter is common. Someone shares gossip about an overseer's poor handwriting. Someone else recites a tale from myth of Set's betrayal, of Isis's cunning, of Horus's triumph. The stories bring comfort, not just for their lessons, but for the sense of continuity they offer. Here, in this walled village, the myths are lived anew with each telling, and still, among the shards of daily life, you find something surprising. Humor. Scrawled on an ostrakon, a cartoon shows a cat leading a goose on a leash. Another depicts a noble woman in exaggerated style, her makeup uneven, her wig askew. These are not acts of rebellion, but release. Small jokes etched between the lines of sacred duty. Inside homes, fertility figurines are tucked beneath mats. The goddess, Taurit, with her lion's paws and swollen belly, watches over sleeping children. Amulets of base are worn for protection during childbirth. These are not state-sanctioned rites, but private beliefs that pulse beneath the surface of public piety. Even in the shadow of the pharaoh's tombs, these villagers carry gods of their own choosing in their pockets and prayers. When disputes arise, they are handled with the same bureaucratic thoroughness that marks their work. A man accuses his neighbor of stealing copper chisels. A woman complains that her husband struck her. The village has a court elders and scribes who hear both sides, who record proceedings, who offer judgment. Punishments are mild, usually fines or restitution. What matters most is the recording, the writing. Justice here is a matter of ink and memory. Seasons pass, the flood comes, and then recedes. Crops rise and fall. Children grow. Some leave, taken to work on temples or palaces. Others stay inheriting brushes and chisels and the burden of perfection. And then, gradually, the village quiets. The tombs of the kings are finished. The workers are reassigned. The gates of Deir el-Medina close more often. Some families leave for Thebes. Others are absorbed into nearby settlements. The rhythms that defined this hidden world begin to fade. Centuries pass. The desert reclaims what it can. Roofs collapse. Sand creeps in through doorways. The walls crumble, until, one day, explorers find it again. Archaeologists dig carefully through the dust. They find tools still wrapped in linen. Bowls and baskets stacked beside a strucker by the hundreds. Notes, jokes, prayers, receipts. A love letter, faded but clear. You are my lotus, the one I waited for. A curse against a neighbor. A shopping list for a feast. They uncover skeletons in modest tombs, laid to rest with amulets, with shabti figurines, meant to serve in the afterlife. These were not forgotten people. Their lives were ordinary, but their memories endured. Today, we walk their streets in silence. We see their work, not only in the grandeur of the royal tombs, but in the small touches of home wall paintings, clay figurines, carved lintels. We listen, quietly, to their voices etched in broken stone. And so the forgotten city beneath the sands rises again, not in grandeur, but in the quiet dignity of remembered lives. Segment 4. The perfumed lives of the priestess. Class, luxury and ritual in Thebes. Now we rise from the dust and the stone-cut alleys of Deir el-Medina and move eastward across the floodplain into a world of carved columns, scented breezes, and soft shadows. Here the burdens of physical toil are lifted, but in their place are expectations, layers of ritual, and the weight of invisible power. You awaken not in a mud-brick home, but in a room filled with soft linen drapes that stir gently in the morning breeze. Light spills across the polished floor of alabaster and rose-colored sandstone. The room is cool, quiet. There is the sound of water, carried in jars by servants, and the faint scent of lotus oil rising from a shallow dish left near the doorway overnight. You are a high-ranking priestess of Thebes, perhaps serving in the great temple of Ammon, or perhaps you are the daughter of a noble house, married into a priestly family, bound to the temple through blood, status, and ceremony. Your role is spiritual, but also social, ceremonial, political. A servant approaches, bowing, and draws aside the gauzy curtain that separates your chamber from the veranda beyond. The Nile is just visible in the distance, shining like metal beneath the morning sun. Palm trees rustle. White birds take flight in a curve across the sky. The first ritual of the day is pure. You do not bathe in a river or draw water from a public basin. Instead, attendants pour cool water over your shoulders as you sit on a low, curved stool in a shaded courtyard. The water flows into a marble basin carved with the symbols of Hathor and Mat. Your skin is scrubbed gently with powdered natron. Oils are applied: sandalwood for sanctity, blue lotus for serenity, a touch of frankincense to remind you of the temple's inner sanctum. Then comes dressing. You do not wear coarse linen. Your robes are fine and sheer, pleated with care, fastened with gold clips that glint in the sunlight. You wear jewelry, but not in excess. A broad collar of turquoise lapis and carnelian rests on your collarbone. Each piece is symbolic. Each stone has meaning: protection, healing, power. Your wig is styled by hand, oiled and perfumed, arranged into long symmetrical locks. The scent of myrrh clings to each strand. Cosmetics are applied: green malachite on the lids, a fine line of kohl to define the eyes, a touch of crushed red ochre to the cheeks. These are not mere vanities. They are protective, spiritual. To wear kohl is to see clearly, to reflect the sun, to ward off the evil eye. As the day begins in earnest, you enter the outer court of the temple. You are not alone. Other priestesses walk beside you, their footsteps silent on the cool stone. The columns rise high around you, each carved with the names of kings and the praise of Amen. Incense burns at the threshold. The scent is thick, sweet, and strange copal. Resin, sacred woods. You do not speak. Not yet. This is the hour of silence. Inside the temple, priests chant in measured tones. The air is dim, cool, almost liquid in its stillness. You walk slowly through the hypostyle hall, beneath the weight of history and stone. Each shadow, each shaft of light is precisely placed. This is no chaotic worship. This is design, order. Your role may involve tending the statue of the god. Perhaps you are one of the few chosen to awaken the deity at dawn, to offer bread, wine, and incense. Perhaps you anoint the god's image with sacred oil, or change its clothing. These acts are secretive, reverent. The god is not alive as we are, but not dead either. It exists in a liminal state, drawn to the world by a rhythm, scent, sound. Later, you may help prepare the sacred bark, the divine baton, which Amen will travel during festivals. The processional way must be purified, the offerings arranged, flowers are gathered, music rehearsed. Each act is part of a larger harmony. Outside the temple, your life is no less structured. You return home in the early afternoon. Servants bring fresh water, cool cloths, and a small meal: honeyed bread, figs, a handful of almonds, a slice of roasted duck, lightly salted. You eat beneath a canopy of woven reeds in your inner garden, where vines climb along the limestone walls and fountains murmur softly in the heat. Visitors may come: other noblewomen, relatives, scribes from the temple, petitioners. Conversation is polite, full of subtle inquiry. Who has gained favor? Who has fallen from grace? Who will marry whom? Gossip, too, is ritual. You may review household records. You may supervise the dyeing of fabrics, the arrangement of dowries, the repair of a servant's quarters. You may write a letter, sealed with a carved scarab, to be sent to Priva, to Karnak, or south to Aswan. In your chambers, the air is darkened with cool linen curtains. You recline on a cedarwood couch, your head supported by a carved ivory rest. Musicians play a soft tune in the distance: a harp, a flute. The melody does not demand your attention. It simply exists. Evening comes. The temperature cools. You rise once more and walk to the rooftop garden. There, above the city, you can see the Nile turning gold in the fading light. The desert beyond glows pink, and the far cliffs are shrouded in shadow. The air smells of tamarisk and night-blooming jasmine. You offer a prayer, spoken quietly, not to Amen, but perhaps to Hathor, or to Isis, or to Mat. Each woman in your position has her own devotions. There is room for them here. You touch the amulet at your neck and close your eyes. This is a life of silence and fragrance, of duties performed without blood or dust. But it is not a life without pressure. There are expectations. You must appear serene, even when sorrow shadows the house. You must remember names, titles, histories. You must never forget your place in the order of things. And yet, there is softness here. There is music. There is cool water. There is the presence of gods, not as distant tyrants, but as silent companions. You are both servant and symbol, mortal and ornament, a woman and something more. You have witnessed weddings, quiet affairs, arranged with tact, not always with love, but with mutual benefit. You've seen young priestesses join your ranks, uncertain, whispering the prayers under their breath until they learn the rhythm. You've seen widows return to service, their eyes dry, their posture perfect, their grief carried in silence. At festival time, your world blooms. You help hang garlands across courtyards. You oversee the brewing of beer for ceremonial use. You watch dancers rehearse movements precise and smooth, arms lifted in arcs, feet silent on the stone. When the procession begins, you are dressed in white and gold, walking behind the god's image, eyes lowered, hearts steady. The crowd watches. Some cheer, some kneel, some cry. The presence of the god is believed to pass among them, and you, one among many, carry part of that power. You do not speak of this. You return to the temple as the sun sets. As the bark is returned to its sanctuary, you disrobe in private. You bathe again in silence. Night falls. You sit once more on your rooftop garden. The scent of blue lotus lingers in the folds of your robe. The moon glows like polished alabaster, and beneath it all, the Nile flows. This, too, is Egypt, not the battlefield, not the market, not the dusty Alabert, a realm of scent, of symbol, of layered beauty and quiet strength. A world not written in the scrolls of conquest, but breathed in soft prayers and poured in oils at dawn. And so, the life of a priestess drifts onward, like the smoke of incense curling through the temple's sacred air. Conclusion: now that our journey has reached its end, take a moment to breathe in the silence we've created together. We have walked through hot, dusty alleyways and stood in the flickering shadows of temple walls. We've followed the grain of daily life, heard prayers whispered over grinding stones, and felt the weight of ritual settle like incense on the skin. From the laborer's wife in her humble home, rising with the dawn to knead bread and sweep dust from her doorstep, to the sculptors and scribes of Deir el Medina scratching jokes and grief into broken shards of stone, every life held a rhythm, a duty, a place in the great river of time. We have stood beside Akhenaten, watching him raise a strange city from the sand in the name of a god who had no face. We watched it gleam and fall. We have wandered lost cities, run our fingers across graffiti left behind by men who carved eternity for others and left echoes of themselves behind. We have drifted up the steps of Thebes to find a quiet world of perfume and protocol, where women moved in silence and power through shadows of gold. Now as the Nile winds away behind us, and the sky dims to lavender and dusk, we return to the present with the scent of oil still lingering, in memory and the hush of ancient breaths still echoing in our ears. The people we've met are long gone. Their bones have returned to dust, their names mostly lost. But the rhythm of their lives remains in baskets that still hold traces of grain, in brushes hardened with ancient color, in the tiny, faded prayers scratched into the walls of forgotten homes. Sleep now, if you haven't already. Let the steady lap of the Nile in your mind carry you outward. May your dreams wander through cool corridors and starlit courtyards. May you rest beside calm water, beneath silent statues, in the peace of a world long past, but not lost. Good night.